부산 트랜스미디어포럼 첫째 날 두 번째 세션을 시작하겠습니다. 저는 사회를 맡은 김희석입니다. 안녕하세요. 네, 두 번째 세션의 대주제는 포스트 시네마의 생태학이고요. 이번 세션은 영화와 스크린컬처 그리고 N-스크린 시대 영화라는 부제로 진행될 예정입니다. 오늘 세 분의 발제자께서 발제를 해주시고 세 분의 토론자가 또 토론을 이어주실 겁니다. 먼저 발제를 해주실 분은 홈무비 아카이브의 포스트 시네마 생태학이라는 주제로 파울로 시모니 국립 홈무비 필름 아카이브 디렉터 겸 프로그래머께서 발표를 해주실 예정입니다. 네, 그럼 먼저 파울로 시모니 선생님을 박수로 맞이하겠습니다. 네.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy for being here with you for this possibility you gave to present our work in Italy, in Bologna, from the point of view of Movies Archive. This presentation is about the strategies of programming and of amateur and experimental cinema in the set of the new challenges of what is happening now, some several years, and also after the pandemic. And it reflects the point of view and the experience, more than 20 years of experience, of the Archivio Movies, and also of its annual festival, film festival, Archivio Aperto. Born more than 20 years ago as an independent project, the Archivio Movies in 2011 was recognized by the Italian state for the historical importance of its collection. Archivio Movies from the beginning is focused on valorization of private film heritage, then new heritage, an heritage that previously was not very considered in the field of archive. Our collections consist in around 35,000 reels that are preserved in a small gauge formats. That it means on movies, amateur cinema, experimental cinema, all was shot mainly in 4 film formats that are 60 mm, 9.5 mm, Super 8, 8 mm. Since 2008, Archivio Aperto is our archival film festival. It involves the space of the archive, but also other venues of the city of Bologna, institutional venues, but also independent venues, film galleries, art galleries, museum, public space, and also cinema theaters. Archivio Aperto came out from previous experience in organizing events like On Movie Day and the UNESCO Audiovisual Day for Heritage. Maybe you know this. These are events that are made for valorizing film heritage in all the form you can find and you can valorize. In the last years, since 22, the festival opened also an international competition for found footage films. Then we have experienced and experimented in 20 years several ways of promoting and screening films in small gauge that are usually unseen or difficult to see, and usually historically were not screened in public. Then for or just screened in a little circle like Cineclub and whatever. Then for do this job, you have to invent always new ways of screening nowadays this type of cinema that was not previously screened in cinema theater, was not theatrical. And this challenge changed with the pandemic that asked to us to think new ways of showing this film. Then since the beginning, we had to think about of strategies, curatorial approach for this kind of film heritage. That is means to try every time to ask yourself how to take this heritage to the public. This means, for example, in case of movies, that the people are telling their stories, watching the film together with other people. Then we ask to the donors, to the owners of movies, to tell about their lives in front of an audience of maybe of a little city or little village, or maybe in a quarter of the city, sharing their memories together with the others and exchanging memories. This is the idea of a movie day event, for example. Another way we experienced it since the beginning, since many of these materials are silent, is to perform the film heritage with live music to make this material more contemporary in a way, to put it in dialogue with different generation, to make the public and the audience wider, and to, of course, experiment the relation between image and sound. Another way was from the beginning to put the film in the same place where the film was shot. Then means screening films in the landscape. Here you can see is an example. The image, the frame of the film was shot exactly in the same park where it was shot 30 or 40 years ago. The same we did in several places of the city of Bologna, especially in the periphery, from church yard to popular public houses and whatever, to find a new relation between the film heritage and the space of the city, how it's changed during the ages, the city, how the films now are dialoguing with the space and the people. We always try to make also a sort of emotional immersion in the film heritage. For example, in private film collections like this one, that was belonging to the Circus family Togni, and we expose this film collection on screened on 4 sides of a cube. All the whole collection, that was maybe 4 or 5 hours, was screened in a show of 1 hour with musician was playing, 4 musicians were playing, each one from one side of each side of the cube, and this gave to the people the possibility to enter in the film collection. This was made for the inauguration of the new place for Eye Film Institute in Amsterdam. And also, this is another case of a film that was a long film telling the story of a family in different years that was screened, installed with 5 screens. Then a new way of showing films that they were screened maybe 50 or 60 years ago in very, very close and private places. Another strategy that we adopt that is more than a strategy but a strong idea is to provocate a reenactment of experimental and amateur cinema through the use of the original dispositive, then the film projector and the film itself as material, to give back the perception of what it was, and especially what it was cinema in its materiality, and especially what it was the experience of cinema. I repeat, we are all talking about a cinema that was not screened in a cinema theater. It was screened in front of few people sharing the same experience, maybe talking during the screening in case of movies, or before and after in case of an underground film. And the screening were always with the projector in the same room. Then the projector and the author of the film were part of the show. And then we try to recreate this kind of experience nowadays, to try it also for educational purpose. This is an example of maybe a further step that we try to find also the original place, like art galleries, where in the 70s, many, in the case of Italy, many of film of artists were screened. We went in the same place, we screened the same film in new restored editions that we print again on 60mm film. Then we try to give back the performance of cinema in case of 60mm screening, for example. One of the film, we do restoration and a new edition of film of filmmakers and artists that were active in Italy between the 60s and the 70s. Here at the festival, you have an example, because in the program by Pip Chodor of the Cinema of Reality, we have the screening of The Night and Day by Gianni Castagnoli. That is a masterpiece of Italian cinema shot in Super 8 in the mid-70s. And of course, doing all this, we try to build a community of people sharing a cinematic experience, sharing again, and a way of being together through cinema and through films. Here we are again together, sharing the experience. It's important to add that showing these films means, first of all, contextualize the work, contextualize the time, the historical backgrounds, to make these works available and understandable now. Because in many cases we have not anymore the authors of the film. Historically, authors were together with the film always. They were screening the film directly, because the film, usually amateur and experimental film, are in a unique copy. Then it was like the author going with a copy to the screening. And an issue of restoration of this kind of film is what you do when the author is not anymore with us. Then we try to answer to this. This is, for example, the case of a famous film, Lost, 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 by Jonas Mekas, that we presented like the film of an immigrant who got a 16mm camera and film his life. And after he made these diaries, you know. And this is a way to us to make this masterpiece also dialoguing with the contemporary issues like immigration. Within the festival, there is also, of course, the idea of meeting the filmmakers. In our case, filmmakers that works with film heritage and archival material. Here we have a workshop with Gustav Deutsch, our beloved Gustav Deutsch, and Anna Schimek, that were in Bologna in 2018. Here we have Boris Lehmann, that also did with us a workshop on Super 8 shooting with some students, but we have guested important filmmakers and archivists like Rick Freilinger or or Peter Forgach. Another strategy to involve the audience or make the public more aware of film heritage, of private film heritage, is organizing the visit to the archive and show the work, the processes, the materials. And transmit to the new generation this knowledge. Because, as I said, we restore as archive and digitalize and store the original. But to come to the point, the turning point of our idea of curating on movies archives was the pandemic turn. In this moment, we had to front that all what we did for 15 years was impossible to do again, just for one moment, maybe 1 year, but we didn't know. And at the time, the projectors were left alone in the room without people as audience, without someone that could use them. Then how to do in this moment? To think the same ideas, but on online programming, like many did. They tried, as for example, film festival did version of online. Some film festival did it, some others they prefer to stop. We prefer to continue, and to feeling that it was also an opportunity to find a new audience. Yes, of course, we have lost live cinematic experience, screening films on film material, the original material, being together and be physically close, but also we miss the physically physicality of the places and the materiality of the film. At the same time, we found other opportunities for improving our relation with digital platform that at the time was not so big. Finding a new audience at a global level, not only at the local level, that was possible with a digital platform that reach people from all over the world. And of course, make the audience and find new audience that discover amateur and experimental film heritage. At the same time of the pandemic in Italy, at the lockdown in 2020, we were already experimenting a different access to the film archive through the platform Memoryscapes that allows people to watch a large selection of the films we have in the archive with a strategy of bits and pieces. That means that we just select some pieces of very long and maybe boring movies to make easier for the people to see and to navigate the archive. And in the framework of Memoryscapes, we decided to do an experiment of streaming that at the time was maybe new, since we screen with a live musician in the room, in the theater, and whatever. We decided to do also this when they were at home alone. Then we asked to 5 musicians to sonorize, to sound a film that we have on Liberation of Italy, that is 25th of April, with the live streaming of their performance. And this was like 2 months after the lockdown, while it was impossible to meet each other. But it was a really successful project, also with some symbolic values, because this film that we sounded live on streaming was a film made by a young filmmaker, Antonio Marchi, that at the time was 20, that was hidden from the Nazis in Italy. He was staying in his room, watching and filming from the room during the winter, waiting for the end of the war, and being hidden, not to be discovered, not to be taken by the Germans. And after this heavy and difficult winter, the liberation came with the Allies, the Allies troops and the partisans, and the spring came, and he went out with his 60mm camera, filming the liberation and the celebration after the liberation. We use this film as also for the value of the idea of being separate without seeing other people, and after to be free again. And this is just a little clip on this. project was successful, we decide to do the same for the next Archivio Aperto edition in 2020. Then we did another live performance on films from our archive. On the theme, there was a selection of material concerning women at work in movies and industrial film. Then we have this woman at work during the 20th century, sounded live again as a program of Archivio Aperto Festival that the people could watch from home, since it was impossible to screen live. And we had the same way of programming, but on platform. The festival in this case was all online. It lasted 2 months, and we had 40 programs. The programs were available only on digital platforms, on different digital platforms. The contents of the program were more produced and post-produced than usual. We did a lot of editing and post-production. We recorded the interview, and we built contributions. But we had the idea to be coherent of our curatorial approach, as I will try to show you. This, for example, the same of before, someone talking about a film he or she did, or about experience she had through a film. In this case, is a teacher of a primary school in Reggio Emilia during the 70s that tells stories and memories on some educational projects that was at the time pioneering in the school in the 70s. Here we have the live event as meeting and workshop with Zoom. In this case with Yael Perlov, talking about Diary by her father David, shot between 73 and 83. And this masterpiece in 6 parts was one of the major features of our online project. It was interesting because this film, that usually was screened in theaters or as installed as a film installation, maybe for the first time was watched like a sort of a Netflix series or whatever. And we realized that the people from home react exactly like for a series. The people watch today, watching one part after another part, one episode after another episode, commenting, exchanging, sharing, something that work very well through social network, because many people didn't do about this film, had the opportunity to know it and saw it. But also we try to do something that is impossible, but maybe through video was also possible to show how to screen with a projector, to make tutorials, to make available tutorials for the people who would like to know more about projectors and film screening. And then we built virtual tours of the archive that it was not possible anymore to visit, but it was possible to know from far away in this case. And then the screening, for example, but also the restoration, for example, or archival process. And also we try to build again a community, but this time online, with this claim movies at home, and the people could send us or publish the way they were attending the festival. And here there are some examples. Then the people react, the people was being part as public of the festival in a different way. And we try also to reach new public through a different program. For example, in this case, I call it Super 8 pop culture. We did some programs on films made by Robert Gnozzi and his micro factory in New York between the 60s and the 70s. Robert Gnozzi was a very young filmmaker with his friends of school. They made some film recalling and in a way making parodies of the masterpiece of the time, dealing with horror, fantastic, and whatever. And here are some example of the program. And here there is a reaction from home.
Allora, cosa dobbiamo guardare?
What we can see?
Che si è boccato di pomodoro, quello che è così.
We may see this one with the tomato sauce on his face, and it was a really tomato sauce, not blood, of course. And then after the lockdown, fortunately, we came back to the places, and we continue to do our festival in the traditional way, but not traditional because it's not a traditional festival. What we should do from this experience? We thought to continue to have an online program. Besides, we prefer to meet people, but we thought that film archives need to do this. Also, for example, Cinémathèque Française has a lot of successful showing online parts of its collection that never was screened before, because they were strange films that usually they don't screen in the cinema. They put online during the lockdown, and this had a lot of successful. And new ways to experience cinema from different perspective, finding new perspective of also watching. And we did this project like for the centenary of amateur film Gauge, like 9.5 Pate Baby that was born in 1923 for 2023, then 100 years after. We did this almanac on the history of amateur filmmaking, and we have a digital platform on movies 100.it, and for the whole year in 2023, each day we were programming a film that was shot on that day. For example, again, since now it's 24th of April, the day of liberation of Italy, again the film on liberation of Italy, that today is available on the digital platform. Tomorrow will be another film, and for each day is like the same, like telling the story through the almanac, through the calendar, and not through the timeline. A new way of narrating the film history. In this case, film history of amateur filmmaking. Or again, our film festival, Archivio Aperto, that has a competition now since some years. Every year we have a claim. This is the claim of the last edition, that we are working with a film heritage, mainly with private film heritage, but we don't want to be nostalgic. We want to work with this heritage because of the challenges of today, or the way of fronting the challenge of the future. That the memory is what we mean, so important to us, to understand us and understand the world we are living. And here just a clip finishing on this program by Gnosi, by 2001 remake by young kids, Italian American kids in New York at the end of the 60s. Just some seconds. Thank you for listening to me.
두 번째 발제는 우리 싸이파이안페스타 이한 위원장께서 발표해 주시겠습니다. 주제는 광장과 밀실 사이, 스크린과 윈도우를 가로지르는 영화입니다.
안녕하세요. 저는 국내 유일의 SF 독립영화의 경쟁영화제를 만들어서 어렵사리 운영하고 있는 이안이라고 합니다. 오늘 제가 이제 발표를 할 내용은 OTT 시대에 대해서 그 영화관은 어떻게 작동할 것인가에 대한 발표를 해줬으면 좋겠다라는 얘기를 들었을 때, 사실 OTT가 처음 등장했다라고 했을 때 별로 낯설습니다. 왜냐하면 저희 어렸을 때 영화를 TV에서 많이 봤거든요. 사실 어린이들이 극장을 많이 간다, 그러니까 영화 상영관이라고 얘기했을 때 극장을 많이 간다라는 일보다는 그 당시에는 그러니까 시네마라는 것을 볼 수 있는 장소들이 한정되어 있고, 그 당시에 영화의 수명은 개봉관이라는 한 극장에서 오래 개봉을 하고, 그 다음에는 이제 보통 그 개봉관은 도심에 있고, 그 다음에 재개봉관이라고 해서 부도심이거나 지방에서 개봉을 하고, 그 다음에 이제 뭐 동시상영하는 극장들을 돌다 보면 한 영화가 영화관에 걸려있는 수명이 개봉하고 2년, 3년 정도의 사이클이었습니다. 그러고 나면은 TV에 뭐 주말의 명화라든가 뭐 아니면은 추석 특집 이런 식으로 크리스마스 영화 이런 식으로 또 영화가 상영되고, 매 주말에는 우리가 볼 수 없는, 그 당시에는 이제 한국에 시네마테크 같은 것도 없었고 영화제도 없었고, 그리고 그 당시에는 아직 그 가정용 홈 비디오라는 개념이 없었던 시기에는 영화는 그래서 상영관에서 못 본 사람들은 기다리면 TV에서 본다. 그런데 내가 원하는 방식이 아니라 TV에서 편성해서 보여줄 때 이렇게 생각을 했었지요. 그런데 이제 요즘은 플랫폼이 굉장히 다양해지면서 제가 이 제목을 퍼블릭 스퀘어라고 얘기하는 것은 아까 이제 제 앞에 발표하신 분도 말씀하셨지만 함께 보는 것. 그러니까 상영관에서 본다는 것은 혼자가 아니라 함께 본다는 얘기지요. 그렇다면은 요즘 영화를 보는 그 컨벤션이 많이 바뀌어 있죠. 집에서 누군가는 전철 안에서 자기의 스마트폰으로 다운로드 받은 걸 보기도 하고 아니면 한 가족이 다 뿔뿔이 흩어져서 누구는 태블릿으로 보고 누구는 데스크탑으로 보고 또 누군가는 거실에 있는 큰 그 가정용 비디오 오디오 시스템으로 보기도 하고 이렇게 개별적으로 보는데 이렇게 개별적으로 보는 공간을 프라이빗 캐비닛이라고 한 이유는 그냥 제가 이 캐비닛이란 말이 칼리가리 박사의 밀실이라는 영화를 다들 아실 텐데 거기에서 그 밀실 숨어있는 공간 아주 그 개별적인 공간을 캐비닛이라고 해서 저도 여기에서 그 개별적인 공간을 캐비닛이라고 해봤습니다. 그래서 그 상영관에서는 우리가 스크린으로 보죠. 그런데 이 영화가 상영관을 떠나고 나면 TV에서 보든 아니면은 비디오 온 디맨드로 보든 아니면 OTT로 보든 이런 것들은 모니터라는 윈도우를 통해서 보게 됩니다. 자, 그렇다면은 영화를 보는 플랫폼이란 무엇인가? 사실 플랫폼이라는 것은 우리가 제일 먼저 떠올리는 것은 뭐 류미에르의 영화이기도 할 거예요. 기차가 떠날 때 사람들이 플랫폼에서 기차를 기다리기도 하고 거기에 내려서 어딘가 가기도 하고 또는 무언가를 올려놓는 단상 같은 것을 플랫폼이라고도 하는데 요즘은 영화를 꼭 스크린에서 본다라고 하지 않고 어떤 플랫폼에서 보는가라는 부분들의 얘기가 있습니다. 그렇다면 동영상을 혼자 들여다볼 것인가 아니면 여럿이 함께 펼쳐놓고 볼 것인가 이 문제는 사실은 요즘의 문제가 아니라 영화의 역사가 시작될 때부터 영화란 무엇인가 또는 무엇을 영화라고 할 것인가를 가르는 하나의 기준이었지요. 그래서 혼자 보는 영화를 생각했던 에디슨이 있고 공개적으로 여럿이 함께 보는 영화를 얘기했던 류미에르 형제가 있는데 에디슨은 그때 혼자 보는 영상을 상품으로 본 것이죠. 그래서 에디슨은 키네토스코프와 키네토그래프를 발명하고 그게 1891년입니다. 그때 혼자 들여다보고 그리고 매 장면마다 특허를 내서 그 기술을 자기가 독점해서 이윤을 극대화해야지라고 생각한 것입니다. 그런데 류미에르 형제는 시네마토그래프를 그 이후 불과 4년 후인 1895년에 공개 상영을 하죠. 파리에 있는 그랑카페라는 곳에서. 그러면서 이 시네마토그래프의 제작 기술뿐만 아니라 이것을 운영하는 기술까지 공개를 하고 그리고 이걸 사람들한테 가르쳐서 아예 판을 키워버립니다. 시장 자체가 커지게 된 거죠. 자, 이렇게 여럿이 보는 게 꼭 영화뿐이었느냐. 사실 영화 이전에도 공개적으로 동영상이거나 영상의 어떤 환영을 만들어내는 것들을 보는 우리는 그 영화의 프리히스토리, 전사가 있습니다. 가령 18세기 후반에 에티엔 가스파르 로베르송이라고 하는 사람은 판타스마고리아라는 것을 이건 그림으로 그린 것을 뒤에서 랜턴에서 그러니까 매직 랜턴하고도 비슷한 방식이죠. 상영을 할 때 일부러 버려진 수녀원에서 아니면은 폐허가 된 성당 같은 데서 공연을 했다고 해요. 그러면 밖에서 막 천둥이 칠 때도 있고 여기 이제 뭐 박쥐 이거는 그림이 아니라 사실은 주변에 박쥐가 매달려 있기도 하고 이렇게 폐허 같은 데서 바람소리, 빗소리 등의 음향 효과를 결합시키면서 거기에다가 인공적으로는 이렇게 연기도 피우고 뭐 특수 효과를 곁들이면서 환상적인 연출을 극대화했습니다. 그야말로 판타스마고리아라는 말이 딱 어울리죠. 이때도 사람들은 그곳에 모여서 봤던 겁니다. 자, 그리고 최초의 애니메이션이라고 얘기할 수 있는 광학극장이라는 것은 이제 파리 그레방 박물관에서 이제 파리 박람회 무렵에요. 프락시노스코프라는 그 기계를 통해서 여기 필름 스트립이 돌아가는 것과 비슷한데 여기에다 이 사람이 일일이 에밀 레이노가 손으로 그림을 그려서 그 보통 300개의 스트립을 이렇게 돌려가면서 그 상영을 했는데 이때도 보면은 뒤에서 빛을 비춰서 그림이 움직이게 만들지만 앞에는 아주 많은 사람들이 관람을 한 겁니다. 그러니까 박람회적이고 아주 대중적인, 그러니까 퍼블릭 스페이스에서 상영을 하는 것이 영화의 전사에 있었고, 당연히 사람들은 에디슨의 방식이 아니라 광장의 방식인 루미에르의 방식을 영화의 역사에서 최초의 영화로 인정을 하고 그것이 전 세계적으로 퍼져나가게 됐던 것이지요. 그래서 에디슨은 특허로 꽁꽁 묶어서 수익 사업으로 자신이 기획한 것이 황금알을 낳는 거위가 되어줄 줄 알았겠지만은 고정된 장소에 한 사람씩 들어가서 동전 내고 혼자 보는 그런 방식에 발전하는 것과 다르게 시네마토그래프는 촬영, 현상, 영상까지 한 대의 기계로 할 수 있는 기술의 발전, 테크놀로지가 함께 가게 되면서 이제 장소를 처음에 산 곳도 카페였듯이 그 이후에도 공연장이라든가 카지노라든가 상영을 바라는 사람들이 모여있는 스퀘어라면 어디든지 가서 상영을 했고 이것이 아주 대중적이 됩니다. 그래서 한꺼번에 그 당시에 200대의 기계를 주문했다는 것 자체가, 그리고 그 기술을 각 시네마토그래프의 운영자들에게 전수했다는 것 자체가 영화가 가지고 있는 대중성, 확장성을 만들어냈다고 봅니다. 그러면서 오기스트 루미에르는 자신의 회고록에서 이렇게 얘기를 합니다. 프로젝터, 스크린, 검은 방, 그리고 방 안에 10명이든 100명이든 1000명이든 사람들이 모인다. 프로젝트가 켜지고 스크린이 밝아지고 그러면 이미지가 춤을 춘다. 그렇게 1000명의 사람들이 하나가 됐다. 즉 시네마란 열린 장소인 어두운 광장으로 사람들을 모아서 공동의 경험, 공동의 정서를 같이 경험하도록 만드는 것이었죠. 자, 그렇다면 한국에선 어땠느냐? 한국에서 최초의 영화라고 상영 누가 했느냐 하면은 에디슨의 나라인 미국에서 왔지만 루미에르의 방식인 시네마토그래프를 가지고 왔던 1901년. 그러면은 시네마토그래프로 루미에르 형제 영화를 상영하고 겨우 6년 후에 버튼 홈즈라는 미국인 여행가가 한국에 와서 영화도 상영하고 여기서 영상을 찍어가서 다른 데서 상영하기도 하고 그것은 지금 아카이브가 돼서 한국영상자료원에 기증이 되어 있습니다. 이 사람은 여행가이자 영화 제작자이자 영상 및 출판 사업자이면서 강연가였는데 1952년에 은퇴할 때까지 무려 8,000회 넘게 슬라이드나 영화를 만들어서 그것을 상영을 하면서 자신의 여행에 대한 대중 강연을 하게 됩니다. 내가 어디 갔는데 그 나라는 이렇더라. 세계 여행이 지금처럼 보편화되지 않던 시절이었죠. 그러면서 트래블로그라는 말을 이 사람이 최초로 썼다고 합니다. 물론 이게 정확한지는 저도 모르겠어요. 제가 읽은 책에서 그랬지만 최초라는 것은 자료가 발굴되면 언제든지 다시 더 업데이트가 될 수 있는 거니까요. 이 사람이 1901년에 조선을 방문했을 때 왕실에 가서 이제 고종 황제 앞에서 최초로 영화를 상영하고 당대 조선을 촬영할 수 있는 적극적인 지원을 받게 됩니다. 그러면서 이 버튼홈즈라는 사람은 영화를 어떤 식으로 활용을 했냐면은 일단 여행지에 가면 촬영한다. 그 촬영한 영상으로 여행기를 만드는데 그때 그걸 만들어줄 CEO와 인력을 공연을 하고 그 사람들이 전 세계에 특히 미국 위주겠지만 그런 곳에 강연 및 상영을 할 곳들을 계속 섭외를 하게 해서 그것을 사업화합니다. 그러다가 나중에 헐리우드이 이제 메이저 스튜디오 위주의 상업 영화의 메카가 되었을 때는 그동안 자신이 제작했던 여행 영화를 메이저 스튜디오 파라마운트 같은 곳에다가 팔아가지고 아카이브를 사업화합니다. 이렇게 보자면은 지금까지 버튼홈즈도 그러니까 혼자 보는 것이 아니라 그것을 항상 공개해서 대중화시켰고 어떻게 하면 더 많은 대중으로 퍼져나가게 할 것인가를 모색했던 사람이라는 거죠. 처음부터 영화의 역사는 밀실과 광장이 서로 경합을 했는데 광장이 승리했다. 그리고 이때 촬영이나 영사 그리고 녹음, 재생 등의 기술들은 인쇄술도 있었고요. 이런 테크놀로지들이 영화에 적용되면서 아주 빠른 속도로 세계화가 된 겁니다. 1895년에 시네마토그라프가 처음 파리에서 상영되고 불과 6년 후에 그 당시에는 아직 그 조선이었고 일제강점기를 겪기도 전인 조선왕실에서 그것을 받고 불과 그로부터 몇 년 후에는 이 조선에서도 많은 사람들이 심지어 천막극장에서 영화를 보게 되기까지 합니다. 바로 이러한 부분들이 왜 이렇게 빨리 대중화되고 사람들은 광장에서 영화를 볼 수 있었을까라는 것은 발터 베냐민이 얘기하듯이 기술 복제 시대의 예술작품인 영화는 집단적으로 다수에게 수용된다는 점이 아주 긍정적인 측면이다. 그러니까 기술 복제 시대의 예술작품이 그전의 예술에 비해서 아우라는 없지만 대신에 집단 창작과 감상이 가능한 영화와 같은 예술은 많은 사람들에게 어떤 대중적인 경험과 그리고 공통의 그 힘을 만들어준다라고 얘기를 했지요. 그러면서 이 집단 창작과 감상이라는 것은 항상 그 창작이나 감상이 이루어지는 시기에 정치 경제적인 상황이라든가 당대의 기술이 결합해서 상호작용하고 조응하며 변해오면서 대중 자체를 변화시킵니다. 자, 점점 영화의 역사를 거쳐가면서 플랫폼은 다양화됐지요. 광장이 최초의 시네마의 역사를 써내려가기 시작했다고 해서 밀실이 없어지는 건 아니지요. 대표적으로 뭐 잘 아시다시피 포르노그래퍼라든가 아니면은 뭐 아주 범죄적인 영화인 스너프 필름 같은 것들은 밀실에서 보게 되지요. 그리고 영화관도 변화되죠. 단독 스크린에서 요즘은 어느 나라를 가든 멀티플렉스 하나의 건물 안에 다양한 스크린이 있는 상영관으로 바뀌게 됩니다. 그리고 방송 환경도 변화하게 돼서 이 전파의 사용이 굉장히 다양해지고 지상파, 케이블, 위성방송, 인터넷, OTT 등으로 다양화되고 테크놀로지도 이제 각자 개별 영상 관람이 가능한 시대가 되었습니다. 저 어렸을 때만 해도요. 동네에서 TV에 있는 집으로 몰려가서 보는 시골 같은 경우는 그런 것들이 있어서 한국에서 아주 유명한 가전제품 회사들은 가끔 지금도 자기네 회사가 얼마나 인간적인 가전을 만드는가를 사람들이 함께 모여서 TV 보던 장면을 패러디해서 넣곤 합니다. 자, 그리고 윈도우는 극장 개봉, 비디오 출시, 방송 편성이라는 아주 자체의 루틴을 가지고 있었는데 이제는 그게 깨졌습니다. 퍼블릭 스크리닝을 할 수도 있지만 프라이빗 스트리밍을 할 수도 있습니다. 그래서 영화제나 영화관이 아닌 OTT에서 단독 개봉까지 하는 상황이 되었습니다. 자, 넷플릭스로 상징되는 OTT가 등장을 하면서 개봉의 방식도 바뀌게 됩니다. 전통적 영화 산업 기업뿐만 아니라 다양한 미디어 기업이라든가 통신 기업들까지 경쟁적으로 이제 OTT 시장에 뛰어들게 되면서 새로운 관람 방식을 억지로라도 만들어내려고 하게 됩니다. 2017년 봉준호 감독이 옥자라는 영화를 넷플릭스 단독 개봉을 했지요. 그러나 최초의 스크리닝은 넷플릭스에서 한 것이 아니라 칸에서 했습니다. 그리고 그 영화를 넷플릭스에서 할 때 저는 하필 이 무렵에 그 예술영화 전용관의 관장이었습니다. 그래서 그래도 이런 실험적인 영화를 넷플릭스뿐만 아니라 넷플릭스에 가입비를 내지 않은 사람들도 있었으니까요. 거기 회원이 아닌 사람들도 볼 수 있게 극장에서 상영하면 어떻겠느냐라고 조심스럽게 타진을 했다가 무시를 당했습니다. 그리고 이제 그 이듬해 알폰소 쿠아론 감독이 로마라는 영화를 만들어서 베니스 영화제에서 상을 받았죠. 그런데 이 영화도 넷플릭스 단독 개봉을 하게 됩니다. 그러다가 이제 나중에 사람들이 극장에서도 개봉을 하게 해달라고 해서 다행히 이제 넷플릭스와 동시에 한국에서는 예술영화 전용관에서도 개봉을 하게 됐었습니다. 그런데 이제 만들어진 것 자체가 넷플릭스 단독 개봉을 전제로 제작을 했지 상영관을 전제로 하지 않는다라고 이제 그 배급사에서 제가 이 영화를 상영하기로 결정을 했을 때 조심하라고 이제 이거는 극장을 전제로 한 게 아니다라고 했는데 막상 로마를 봤을 때 깜짝 놀란 게 가정용 비디오 기기로 보는 것과는 아주 다른 영화적 경험이 있었습니다. 영상도 영상이지만 사운드가 굉장히 했거든요. 그렇지만 어쨌든 이런 방식으로 넷플릭스는 영화를 꼭 상영관에서 보지 않을 수도 있다고 공격적으로 선포를 한 것입니다. 자, 그러면서 이제 굉장히 상영관 자체가 위기를 겪게 됩니다. 흥행 상업 영화들이 스크린을 독점하고 무대 인사를 통해서 광장의 효과를 극대화합니다. 그런 영화들이 천만 영화가 되죠. 이런 영화들의 예로는 서울의 봄이라든가 파묘 같은 영화들이 최근에도 있었는데요. 굉장히 놀라운 게 이 영화들은 다른 영화들이 100만 넘기기 힘들다, 200만 넘기기 힘들다라고 할 때 1000만을 넘어가면서 거의 매주 말 또는 거의 매회 감독이나 아니면 출연 배우들이 무대에 와서 관객들하고 인사를 하고 대화를 합니다. 더군다나 이런 상황이 초래되는 그 OTT와 그 천만 영화와 이 사이에 조금 전에 다른 분들도 계속 얘기를 하셨지만 코로나 팬데믹 상황이 벌어집니다. 그러면서 전 세계적으로 광장이 폐쇄됩니다. 어두운 광장인 영화관도 어려웠고 극장도 한국에서는 이제 거리두기라 그래서 좌석을 앞뒤 옆으로 다 떼고 보는 그런 식이 됐었고 영화제들은 그 메타버스 상영이라든가 온라인 상영을 하게 됩니다. 이런 상황에서 대중들은 어디에 익숙해지냐면은 이제 혼자 집에서 OTT로 영화를 보는 게 익숙해지게 됩니다. 그러다 보니까 이 팬데믹이 지나고 이제 지금은 엔데믹이라고 하는데 이 뉴 노멀 시대에는 상영관들은 점점 더 특히 상업영화를 상영하는 대기업의 배급라인들은 3D라든가 4DX라든가 IMAX라든가 돌비 스테레오라든가 이런 블록버스터 위주로 하면서 관람료도 올려받는 방식을 선택하게 됩니다. 그러다 보니까는 최근에 뭐 듄2라든가 아니면 아바타 물의 길 뭐 이런 영화들은 뭐 용암의 뭐 예매 성공했느냐 뭐 남돌비에서 봤니 코돌비에서 봤니 이러면서 시스템이 좋은 그 설비가 잘 갖춰진 테크놀로지가 좀 더 최신인 상영관들로 관객들이 몰리면서 심지어 하루는 24시간인데 25시 상영, 26시 상영 이런 식으로 해가지고 한밤중까지 상영을 하게 되지만 예술영화 전용관이나 독립영화 전용관 같은 이런 스크린은 절대적으로 축소가 되고 운영에 어려움을 겪게 되면서 예술영화, 독립영화, 단편영화 이런 영화들은 다큐멘터리 영화 이런 영화들은 스크린에서 상영을 하기가 어려워져서 OTT 동시 개봉 또는 아예 상영관 개봉을 하지 못하고 OTT에 직행하게 되는 상황이 지금 현재 한국의 상황입니다. 다른 나라가 어떤지는 제가 조사를 잘 못 해봤습니다. 자, 그런데 영화제란 무엇이냐? 바로 영화관이라는 그 어두운 광장, 그 공개된 장소 이런 곳과 OTT를 가로지를 수 있는 곳이 바로 영화제라고 생각합니다. 영화제들은 팬데믹을 거치면서 온라인 상영이라든가 메타버스 상영도 다 경험을 했습니다. 그리고 사실 지금 천만 영화들이 되기 위해서 많은 상업 영화들이 선택하고 있는 전략인 무대 인사는 사실은 많은 영화제들이 GV라든가 마스터 클래스라든가 지금 여기에서 하고 있는 포럼이라든가 라운드 테이블, 기획전, 회고전 같은 이벤트와 부대 행사 등을 통해서 창작자와 그리고 관객, 수용자들이 서로 상호작용하고 의견을 나눌 수 있는 공간을 만들고 그런 기회를 적극적으로 만들어 왔던 곳들이 영화제입니다. 그뿐만 아니라 지금 이 부산국제 단편영화제도 그렇지만은 많은 영화제들은 독립영화, 예술영화, 중편 영화, 단편 영화, 그리고 1세계 영화라거나 아니면은 메이저 상업 영화가 아닌 영화들을 대중들에게 다양하게 소개하는 창구가 되어 왔습니다. 그리고 그것이 축제가 되어 왔죠. 그런데 이런 영화제들이 제대로 운영이 되기 위해서는 당연히 그 영화제를 위해서 봉사하고 아이디어를 만들고 실행할 인력이 있어야 되고 그 인력이 움직이게 하기 위해서 또 비용이 발생합니다. 그뿐만 아니라 부산은 영화제 하기가 참 좋은 곳이에요. 교통도 좋고 숙박 인프라 같은 것도 좋고 상영시설도 잘 갖춰져 있고 영화제를 위해서 훈련된 인력이 굉장히 많은 곳입니다. 이런 접근 편의성도 있어야 하고 그리고 이런 영화제가 열리고 있다고 홍보하고 사람들에게 영화를 알리고자 하는 정보 서비스도 이루어져야 하며 상영 공간 당연히 확보해야 합니다. 부산 같은 경우에는 이 시청자 미디어 센터에서는 이런 포럼이 열리고 있지만은 영화의 전당이라는 영화제만을 위해서 만들어진 공간이 있다는 것이 굉장히 고마운 일이거든요. 그리고 이제 관객들을 만날 영화인들을 지금 여기에도 전 세계에서 많은 분들이 오셨는데 이런 분들을 초청하고 전문가들이 모여서 서로 네트워킹을 하고 의견을 교류할 수 있도록 하는 그런 모든 것들을 위해서는 영화제를 위한 지원이라는 것은 상업적인 마인드로 될 것이 아니다. 그리고 이것이 코로나 이후에 새로운 뉴 노멀 시대라고 얘기했을 때 스크리닝이냐 스트리밍이냐 사이에서 서로 커뮤니케이션 할 수 있는 광장을 그대로 유지하는 방법이라고 생각합니다. 감사합니다.
네, 그럼 세 번째 발제자를 모시겠습니다. 라시미 도리스와미 교수님이시고요. 인도 자미아 밀리아 이스마일리아 공립대 교수로 재직 중에 있습니다. 발표 주제는 크리스탈에서 코스모스로 뉴 내러티브와 뉴미디어란 부제로 발표해 주시겠습니다. 여러분 박수로 맞이해 주시기 바랍니다.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm really very grateful to the BITF and the BISFF for inviting me to this extremely interesting forum. I will begin with the concept of the cultural formation, which was proposed by the formalists in the 1920s and which was also developed by Mikhail Bakhtin in the 1920s, Soviet Union. And they talk of how every cultural work is actually part of a larger formation in which there are the dominant genres and the less dominant genres. There is a kind of power equation among these the elements of this entire formation, and that these forms mingle, they create hybrids, they subvert glorious traditions that have existed, and that this entire cultural formation space is one of contestation and coexistence. So if we are talking of post-cinema, then the very word post, and that's very fashionable today because we talk of post-modernity, post-truth, post just about everything. And so post-cinema, it refers to a stage that is unending, something that cannot be closed, a chapter that can't be closed, a period of long transition, and new power equations between older cultural forms and the new ones coming up, with the previous forms changing and mutating and self-generating themselves in newer conditions. There are many histories of cinema that have been written, and I will be drawing on Gilles Deleuze, whose birth centenary is being celebrated, I think this year and next year. And he says that the history of cinema can really be seen as a history that moved from the movement image to what he calls the time image. And in the movement image, it is cause and effect that is most important, whereas in the time image, I mean, making this extremely brief and simple, In the time image, optical sound images are important. And if we look at examples, then the Hollywood classical film and the classical film style would really be part of the action image period in a sense, which continues because that's the way Hollywood films are made. But the optical sound images kind of begin, according to Deleuze, from majorly from the neorealist cinema into the French New Wave and so on. He also goes on to talk of what he calls crystal images in the time images. And these are, what are crystals? Crystals are formed over very long periods of time, and their geometric surfaces reflect planes of time, past, present, and future. So if we are talking of continuity, and since continuity becomes a major point of debate for post-cinema, and continuity that reflects time, that is a representation of time, plus time that is past, present, future, and we see how there are convergences of the real and virtual, we can actually talk of post-cinema many phases. In this presentation, I'm looking at 3 phases. Post-cinema, when cinema was the dominant form within the cultural formation. 2, post-cinema in the digital age. And 3, cinema in the time of post-cinema. So the example I have taken for the first, that is post-cinema in the time of cinema, is the work of Andrei Tarkovsky. And if we go to Solaris, we see how within Solaris there is this very interesting debate of the copy and the original, because this is a debate that starts right at the beginning of the 20th century with Walter Benjamin, who says that in the age of mechanical production, the copy takes away the aura of the original and takes away the special time and place in which the original exists. But with the new technologies, what really has happened is that every version is an original. And in Solaris, this theme of the new versions of Harry, whom the ocean keeps throwing up for Chris Kelvin, she comes up, but she comes up with a difference. So there is the copy with the difference, which is that she has more memory every time she surfaces. So this is at the level of theme. Tarkovsky also takes up the question of time through what Deleuze calls the fold in time. Deleuze famously says that it is time that forks, not space. We think it is space that creates the division, but actually it is time. And one of the best examples, of course, is the ending of Solaris, as is the ending of Mirror, where in the crystals you have past and present coming together. It is very unclear because we have heard that Chris Kelvin, the main protagonist of Solaris, wants to go back to Earth. But when we see the images of Kelvin back in his beloved home, we are not clear really, has he gone back? And it is only when we see the rain inside the room, this rain here, when it's raining inside the room, that you realize something is not quite okay. There's something askew. And then we see the whole house with the entire surrounding of roads, etc., all being offered up by the ocean for Chris Kelvin as a gift almost. So this is at the level of the folding of time. Mirror has it, and Mirror is far, far more complex. There's no time, so I won't go into it just now. But I will be talking of Mirror for the third thing, which is the use of documentary footage with live action and the creation of several gazes. For Tarkovsky, the home is a central element. In Mirror, which was semi-autobiographical, he uses the home with its many rooms as separate histories. Each room has its own separate history. And he is charting 3 main relationships in the central segment of Mirror. And this is a very complex segment because it has actually done away with the traditional divisions of short, scene, and sequence. It is personal, it is biographical, it is historical, and beyond history, it actually moves into eternity. So the 3 main themes in this central segment of Mirror that he is dealing with is the split in family relationships, the split of Russia, Soviet Union's identity of being an Eastern country that is Asian or a Western country that is European, and of course, wars and suffering of all kinds. So I'm just dealing with the documentary part because there are so many other themes in the central segment, but this is just to give an idea of how documentaries have been used and how the real and virtual come into play. So the first use is that of the Spaniard in the Spaniard room of that particular house. And he is describing a very famous matador. So Tarkovsky uses the footage, and here it is a very straightforward usage in the sense that the Spaniard in contemporary time is talking about a past matador, and we see the matador. So that is descriptive. But then in the same room, there is another Spaniard, a woman called Luisa, who is not very taken up with this whole story and history of the matador. And her own memories are very different. Her memories are about the Spanish Civil War, and she looks away. So there is a look away gaze which sets off the memory of the Civil War. And in the Civil War, there is a whole episode that is shown to us of children being evacuated and parents and children hugging and kissing each other. And this little girl at the end of this documentary segment, she turns around. So when she turns around, you expect that she's probably looking at her parent or some close relative. But then her expression changes to one of surprise and wonder. And what does she see? This is a cut. So this is a continuity and discontinuity kind of cut where she sees, she's obviously not seeing it really, but it is within the cinematic diegetic universe that she sees the USSR hot air balloons. In this picture that I have chosen, the word USSR is not there, but in the later pictures, there is the word USSR written on it. So this is, this cutting into something that obviously she didn't really see, but which is drawing up a memory of a USSR in its happy phase. So war, and then a certain different phase where there is not so much suffering, there's actually something uplifting, and flight, as we know, was very important for Tarkovsky as a theme of upliftment, and these hot air balloons which suddenly come up. So this sequence then continues, and there is this completely incidental character of the woman who the narrator as a teenager was in love with, and his military instructor was also in love with her. And this is the girl whose picture is here. And through a sound bridge, Tarkovsky uses, I think, one of the most brilliant, makes use of footage, one of the most brilliant uses of any footage in world cinema, where he found this footage that had been shot by an anonymous cameraman. And he takes it to kind of bring this entire large central segment of Mirror into a climax. What he does is that these are soldiers who are walking endlessly through Lake Sivash. It's a swamp-like lake. They're drawing this almost ramshackle boat which has cannons on it. And these men are walking endlessly. I mean, they just continue walking. And he gets his father, Arseny Tarkovsky, to read his wonderful poem, Life, Life. And in this poem, the question of eternity, the home, all these themes that Tarkovsky was so involved with. The father is talking of how the table that has been laid for the grandfather will also serve for the grandson, how the blood flows through the veins over centuries, and how immortality exists despite all the suffering. So this kind of transcendence of the theme that had been built up so far through the theme of eternity, eternal suffering, yes, but also eternal happiness in a way through continuation, that is possible. And the cut then that comes is to another character in the same sequence or subsequence within the central segment of this Leningrad siege orphan who's lost everything, who cannot understand the simplest military commands. If he's told to turn around, he turns around 360 degrees and insists he is right, which he is actually. He can't do a 180 turn. This boy who is set in a Bruegelian landscape, Peter Bruegel, whom again Tarkovsky was extremely fond of as a painter. And through him, so as we can see, it is a tunnel of documentary footages that Tarkovsky is going through, and each is building up layer upon layer of meaning. So here we have this young boy, and through him, so is it these characters, incidental or otherwise, who are calling up memories, or are these memories that are calling up people? You know, you almost start wondering whose memories are these. Where are they coming from? Whom do they really belong to? Because this little boy probably could not have seen this documentary footage that follows of Hitler being dead. So you have Hitler being dead as the Western component, you know, that whole theme of East or West for Russia. And then you have the Eastern elements, which is Hiroshima, the bombing, atomic bombing, as well as the Damansky Island incident where Soviet Union and China almost had a face-off on border issues. So many complex themes, memory, history, representation, all through various planes of time, which Tarkovsky captures in this central segment of Mirror. The second example I have chosen is, of course, cinema as digital blockbuster spectacle. And this is Gravity by Alfonso Cuarón, 2013. So the film begins with this wonderful image of the Earth as very calm and peaceful and beautiful in space, and technology, the satellite and the station, all looking very nice and peaceful, till the debris of a Russian satellite that has been shot down by the Russians themselves starts threateningly coming at them. And two of the main protagonist, Ryan Stone's colleagues, die as a matter of this encounter. And only this one woman, Dr. Ryan Stone, with great difficulty manages to live on and reach Earth. So from this very calm picture on the left, we have this terribly chaotic picture of Ryan Stone caught with all kinds of ropes and tethers from the broken satellite station and so on, satellite and space station. I would like to look at these images from the film as what has been called the ruins of modernity. So ruins usually belong to the pre-modern. They are there to be gazed upon. They present themselves with, again, a dual register of time, you know, if we can call it the crystal again, where it is past, but something of the past remains for you to gaze on as the present. So Andreas Huyssen says that authentic ruins, at least as they existed in the 18th and 19th centuries, seem to have no place in late capitalism's culture of commodity and memory. Commodities in general do not age well. They become obsolete and are thrown out or recycled. The ruin of the 21st century is either detritus or restored age. So this ruin, which is the space station or the satellite that the Russians have shot down, this is used by Cuarón for really breaking with the genre of the science fiction film. This particular film is part disaster film as well as science fiction, so it's a kind of combination of both. And in it, the villain is not some alien, but human intervention itself, that is the satellite that has now become a ruin and is coming at them furiously at great speed. Futuristic technology looks ordinary. It's either about, it looks like it's about to collapse any moment. As you can see in this, sorry, the tapes and these very homely tapes, the plastic wires here, the cracked porthole, all of it, which really doesn't give much confidence in something there being out there in space. And the past in this film is evoked through several registers. One is Ryan Stone's own tragic story of her daughter's death. But more than the past, personal past, it's the pre-modern that's also evoked. She catches these radio waves when she's just about to give up and commit suicide. She catches these radio waves of an Inuit who is singing a lullaby to his baby. Somehow she manages to catch it on, up out in space. And that, along with all the groans and grunts, because all she does is try to survive under these very trying circumstances. And she hears the howl of a dog, and she actually starts imitating it. These are just in her last moments. So a pre-linguistic kind of existence at that point, and the whole question of birth and rebirth again and again, because she, the first time she manages to get into safety into the space capsule, she gets into a fetal position. And later on, when she finally survives and lands on Earth, it's as if she is being born and she's playing out the history of mankind, because when man actually got up on his 2 feet from all fours. So that particular human species moment too is what she plays. So that was the blockbuster. Cuarón, for instance, says that he had to wait 4 years till technology developed to a point where he could actually realize his film. And it's a film that is completely digital in the sense of mostly digital. In fact, he says that people told him you should call it an animation film. Why are you calling it a film? And he says no, but because the animators, of course, they worked for more than, out of the 4 years, I think they worked on it for a very long time. He says they had to work nearly 2.5 years before we started shooting. So this is a film that really is with the new media in a sense, and of course the science fiction theme allows it to exploit and explore the new media in very many ways. The third segment is about cinema in the time of post-cinema, and I've chosen Memoria by Apichatpong Weerasethakul. It's a 2021 film, and it's about Jessica Holland, who is in Colombia. She's a Britisher who's landed up in Colombia. She looks after flowers and orchids out there, but her orchids are all dying. And she keeps hearing a sound which she says has no correspondence in anything. It's like a huge round rock that falls somewhere in a well, which is surrounded by seawater. So this is her description of that sound. She goes around all over the city looking for the origin of that sound. And then finally she meets a sound engineer and she asks him to reproduce it, which he does. And when she goes later to meet him, that sound engineer is missing. People tell her there's no such man, Hernan, anywhere. And in this looking for this sound and in trying to keep her orchids alive, she wanders through several spaces, again, where death and the past keep turning up. So one of these spaces is this, she's sitting in a hospital where her sister is admitted, and suddenly this woman comes and says, get up from the chair, because the chair is blocking a door. And behind the door is a huge lab which is looking at these very old skulls that have been found when a tunnel was being made. And these skulls have this trepanation, which is the creation of, drilling of the skull to create holes for whatever reason. So, Memoria, Veera Setakul says, I shot it in film because I needed that film effect. I needed more detail because we shot a lot of nature, and 35mm handles that better than 16mm. Working on film is like a ritual, and it is quieter because of the awareness of the preciousness of the footage. So this is Veera Setakul making a film that's somewhat in the genre of science fiction and shooting it on film. It examines the concept of aliens at several levels. It's, of course, here's a Thai director who goes with a multinational crew and shoots in Colombia with local crew, with finances from all over the world, transnational finances. It's a film that really asks us, what do we know about the world around us? Each and every sequence which we think we understood when it played out, it changes its meaning after it has played out. So the ambivalence of all interpretations and even of our everyday events, each sequence communicates something whose foundations will be shaken later. So again, the question of the past and the future and how it is realized. Towards the end, we are told that, we're not told, but we see this strange whale-like creature rise from the Amazon forest. A sound bursts forth, and it is exactly the same sound that Jessica has been hearing all along. So that's when you realize, oh, okay, so there's science fiction too in this. But ancient skeletons that are found under tunnels. There is a whole tribe in the Amazons they talk of who don't allow outsiders in. She later on, she travels to another rural part of Colombia, and she meets another Hernan. The first Hernan disappeared, the sound engineer. But this Hernan is an older man, and he claims that he can feel vibrations even from stones, and he can hear the histories of people and events that have happened. He says, I don't travel at all. So this is a different kind of person who refuses to travel, because he says, I remember everything and I can't overload my brain. And through her interaction with him, somewhere she understands what this sound was all about. And in a sense, they are exchanging memories. He almost tells her that you're reading my memories now. So we have this woman who seems to be capable of going through very many spaces and not really being very perturbed by what she's going through. At one point, this old Hernan, he just goes off to sleep. And it's such a long sequence and a long take where she just watches him. She even checks to make sure he's not dead. And when he gets up, she asks him, so how was it? How was death? Because it is really like death, his sleeping. So here are 3 films from different cultural formations. The works of all 3 directors from periods when cinema was ascendant or descendant in the cultural formation. They deal with crystals of time. The deep past is invoked with the present, and a sense of the future is imparted. All 3 directors have pushed the limits of the language of cinema, created new subjectivities through their lead protagonists, new narratives, and new gazes towards the past and future. If we look at Tarkovsky's work of the 70s, he is working within the socialist framework. He was working at the films I've looked at are his films from the Soviet Union period. And in a context of very high literacy, because I mean, I can just compare the zero gravity sequence in Solaris, where when Chris Kelvin and Harry float in the library, you have all the elements of high culture, Peter Bruegel's paintings, a huge book, that's Book of Knowledge, you know, beautiful candelabras all floating around. And if we think of gravity and the kind, you know, so many decades later, the kind of zero gravity that Dr. Ryan Stone faces and the kind of chaos, commotion she has to survive at great peril. So you have here a very different kind of cinema practice with Tarkovsky, but an extremely complex one. Today we were talking of AI, and I was really wondering, can AI itself ever reach the kind of complexity, say, that Tarkovsky has evidenced in the central segment, just the central segment of Mirror, the kind of complex historical and philosophical thinking, would it even be possible? So this is Tarkovsky's philosophical cinema. Alfonso Cuarón, he himself is a Mexican that's working with the Hollywood majors. He has created the possible scenario of a possible future disaster, of an Anthropocene moment in space where human beings have actually intervened in the environment to exist to extents where it has now becoming extremely destructive. And of course, Veera Setakul, who with his own brand of cinema deals with how meanings and interpretations can themselves be alien, the whole question of alienness, selfhood and otherness, which he is dealing with. So this is Vivian Sobchak, who talks of how expressive technologies, the new technologies which are meant to express, actually become perceptual. And well, this is there in my paper. I didn't put it into the PPT presentation, but the fact of an eye in inorganic matter, which was first taken up by Dziga Vertov in his Kino Eye. And then, so the new eye of the camera, which can be in a surveillance camera, it can be in a drone, it can be in medical equipment. The eyes are everywhere, and along with AI, they are functioning and interpreting reality for us. So when they become perceptual, and there is the work of Stephen Vial, who talks of how it is only through the technology that there are aspects of reality which become visible. This is the Hubble telescope or the microscope through which we see things which our naked eye anyway cannot. So we have here within the science fiction genre, the gaze of the alien. And this is the first extreme close-up of Harry, the alien humanoid that the ocean has thrown up, who is watching the human, Chris Kelvin. And in this second image, there is again an invisible presence. This invisible presence was also given to us in Stalker, of this feeling that something is existing there, something is watching. And here you have in a car park, burglar alarms just go off for no rhyme or reason, apparently for no rhyme or reason. So we're talking of the digital and the pre-digital imagery, and there's a reference in my paper to Lev Manovich, who says that the difference is really one of indexicality. And we are looking again at cultural formations and these works that were products of certain cultural formations. Of course, gravity is completely made up. It's pure imagination, you know, at all levels. But here in Stalker, in Stalker's dream, you must be remembering it. It's a very apocalyptic, again, there's a poem. It's an apocalyptic moment, and he's dreaming. He's lying in water and dreaming. And he sees again the ruins of modernity. There are hypodermic syringes, coins, a rusted gun. So all that rust and powder, fungal growth, you know, so it's fecund and rusting, both at the same time. In all that, there is this funny and strange image which I've never really understood. It looks like part rock. Oh, the light, you can't really see it. This bit is all like rock. But there's a bit here which looks like tusk. And there are these edges which are like metal. You know, it's like steel or something. So what exactly is this formation? It's like an installation, actually, that he created and put under the water for Stalker's dream. So this mix of, as we can see, reality, fantasy, creating something virtual, which is, you know, Tarkovsky's forte in a sense. This is what he did. So finally, the differing cinematic practices which deal with, I mean, we're also in the age of globalization, global networks, global finance, global everything. But what is the position of the home, the centrality of the concept of the home? If we look at Andrei Tarkovsky's work, home is extremely central, and home is nation, it's many things for him. Extremely central to all his work, Soviet and post-Soviet. In Alfonso Cuarón's work, he's of course working with the Hollywood majors, so it's transnational capital. It's also transnational personnel, transnational talent, because the film is entirely shot Gravity in England. And of course, the theme also at the level of narrative and theme, the concept of the home as something that Dr. Ryan ultimately returns to. But it is with Veera Setakul that we really find a very postmodern and probably post-cinematic sense of global capital plus global talent, transnational talent, and his own dehoming in a sense, where he says, where he has dealt with a narrative that has nothing to do with Thailand in any form. And it has nothing to do with any form of home, because it is actually about this business of being alien in all spaces. So, thank you.